Well, I'm glad to be here on Friday afternoon. I've done this horse and pony show twice today, and I already know it by heart. But one of the things people that don't know me and won't see, you've got to know something about the person and where he came from and his thought patterns and what influenced him on his way. All of it's been influenced by people along the way. And I started out young in life being influenced by architecture. And so I'm going to start where a lot of where I came from, and I think you'll see where I'm going as I get closer to there. It all starts in Chicago, turn of the century, not this past century, one before that, in the early 1900s. And there was a movement and a term that came to light, form follows function, sort of a creed of architecture for a very long time, since this time. And the next step, form ever follows function, is the original quote that was shortened to form follows function by Louis Sullivan. Louis Sullivan was an architect in Chicago, turn of the century, and he loved art and he loved nature. And he designed, at that time, building forms were thought that what made a building form was decoration, art. And he came, this is work of his, and you can see the tree coming up and grasping the corner. And the different shapes and forms, almost looks like a lotus in there. And then oak, look like oak or a holly leaf in there. And the flowing forms that he would create. And these were decorations like this that were placed upon the architecture. This was what created the form of the architecture at the time. But he believed that form follows function. That means function comes first and form follows. And what, with the void gone of, if you weren't going to use decoration, what was going to create the shape of a building? The function of that building. And of course at this time they were doing all this stuff, but they knew nothing about ecology. Ecology was not in the formula for this. Next slide. This man, Frank Lloyd Wright, came from Wisconsin to Chicago to study under Louis Sullivan. He refers to him as his mentor. Even though Sullivan had to fire him, he claims, Wright said he didn't fire him, he quit. But that's another story about an interesting man. But this one picture here led me to where I am now, Falling Water. And it led me to Georgia Tech in the early 70s, architecture school, studied art at the Atlanta School of Art at High Museum on weekends. And but I was a small country boy fresh out of junior college in the big city, and my wife didn't like it, and crime was bad. And so I ended up back in Mississippi. And then my son come along, and I dropped out of school altogether. And then my father was an arborist and a landscaper. And I had this background in architecture. So I said, landscape architecture. And so I came up here to see a friend of mine, Ed Martin, who was a friend of my daddy's. When I was a teenager, we trimmed trees on Mississippi State campus. My daddy was an arborist. And Ed got me into the landscape architectural program, and I'm a graduate here. I am also an alumnus. Mississippi State University, and proud of it. And I learned landscape architecture, the fundamentals, here. Next slide. Probably the Arboretum. That's where ecology came together with architecture. Fay Jones. Lewis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, Fay Jones. Fay Jones studied under Frank Lloyd Wright. So we have this trail from Chicago to Mississippi. Art, culture, function, and ecological form. Those were the three things that I was thinking about at this time. Instead of just form follows function, what creates the design or shape of building is function, which is very true, but it's not the absolute. To me, ecological form is the absolute. The ecology, the ecosystem. Next. I expanded on this. I believe art follows cultural function, which follows ecological form. Art, Millennium Park, Chicago. The Chicago connection. The urban ecosystem, or the hidden ecosystem within Chicago. And a wetland in South Macomb, on Tangipahoa, upper reaches in Persequin State Park. Next. Architecture should spring forth from the environment. This bridge, to me, is the epitome of that. I designed this bridge for State Park Trails contract I had years and years ago when I was up there 2 summers ago at Persequin State Park, staying with my family, and I slipped away from them and went out and walked the trail. And when I went to this site and designed these, it was open forest. It was thicker, actually, around the wet areas because they kind of let light in through the corridor. And so you had a canopy. Well, Katrina came through after that, tore away the canopy, and ecology kicked off. The seed bank kicked up. All these plants are thick and lush and about this tall, all trying to get to fill the canopy, as the forest does. Ecology. And I walked around the path, turned the corner, wondering, where is my bridge? I didn't walk, it seemed like forever. Probably because I was a lot younger when I built it. And I turned the corner and pow! There it was. This hard architectural edge of this bridge in direct contrast to the flowing forms of nature. Architecture should spring forth from the environment. To me, this is the epitome of that. This bridge springs forth from the environment. Hides out, you walk up on it, there it is. Next slide. When we started this project, on most all my projects that I'm allowed to, I seek out representative sites for ecology. We have an area out over there. Have to get oriented here. And we have certain soil. It would have a certain plant characteristics and ecological communities growing there and living there and animals and stuff if we wasn't here and had tore it all out. It would be there. So how do we know what we put back there? Well, we use representative sites from a design standpoint. And we go out and we pick these sites. Tim and Bob here, plant ecologists, they helped me pick the sites because they knew the ecosystem here around Starkville area. And they took me to these sites, and then we proceeded to create a plant list. And we have a very, very broad plant list. We break this plant list into ecological communities. And we break those plant lists underneath those community categories into the physical placement, location within the ecological community. Like in the prairie, is it a shortleaf prairie? You come on the top dry xeric hills to the more slopes, to taller grass prairies, to wet meadows and seeps and swells and runs with a little more moisture down to the bottom. And we looked at the transitions from upland to wetland in these. And these are some of the sites we went to. Knoxby Wildlife Refuge, wetlands. Also Knoxby Beaver Dam, going up 25, off 25. This is over in the research park on the top of the hill where they got the towers and wood structures and all. And it's had southern magnolia in the community. It was high, it was on a sand cap. And then over on the side slopes where you had pockets of alkaline soil. And where this was on an acid cap, red acid cap. This was in the slope with bare eroded out soil and was down to the chalk. And then you come over here, and this is out of Chickasaw Prairie, which I feel like is a better scale for what we're designing. And so we looked at it. This is also over in the research park. This is the bottomland hardwood area. This is Morgan's Bluff, which most of you probably know. More acid soil, more of an acid type prairie. And this, where this is in Chickasaw was an alkaline. This at Osborne, chalk is exposed everywhere. And it's alkaline. And we looked at it, and this is me and Tim and one of the students whose name escapes me. And we were at Osborne there. So we looked at all these sites. We created extensive plant lists of these sites. We tried to dissect these sites. Why? Why were they like that? The cedars were a big thing in Osborne in there. And how the cedars actually were used to help create habitat for different things like insects. And was used for cut them down, even for erosion control, because we've got bad erosion out here in these areas, in the exposed chalk. And you find them, cedars, you just move through this beautiful scenery of prairie patches surrounded with cedars, and then you could slide up into a cap, an acid cap that would have pine trees. Some of them, the cap was deep and you had bigger trees. Some of them it was shallower and you had smaller trees growing slower over time. Next. These are character sketches. We do these for me. I do those for me. What it does, it forces me to sit down for 1 or 2 hours and dissect a little piece of nature. A particular swat of nature. So it forces me to start looking and visualizing the forms. Nature is a process-generated art form. And you have to dissect it out to find what these forms are and see how they work aesthetically, ecologically. I believe that everything relates to everything else. And we don't do anything without affecting something else. These character sketches helps me do that. And these 3 up top is an excellent example of a transition. We started at the top of the hill where we had, you saw the picture of the southern magnolia. That's where it was sketched, in that same spot where I took the photo. And you have these different community types in here. You have the plants, you have ridge top and upper slope, and then you start going down where you're closer toward the bottom where you have these hills, topography slopes off quickly and it kind of bottoms out to a swag that rolls down the hill. And you start picking up hackberries and green ash. Pines are up on these little ridges with the water oaks. And as you drop down further into the water regime in there, you get cottonwood flat. Ashes start dying, disappearing. The hackberries start disappearing. Almost pure stand of cottonwood. So this is the transition. We have a list, and our plant list broke down into these transitions. So I have the list. I have an idea of what these places, I have dissected these places in my head by sitting here doing these sketches. Out at Woodpecker Trail at Knoxville, at the bottom of the hill where it meets the cypress swamp, you have these pines where it's burned in a pine savanna, more of a pine savanna-like area, and it comes down the hill, had this little zone of bottomland hardwoods in there. And red maples, a lot of red maples, and some ash, green ash, growing along this little thin edge. And then you have the cypress swamp, which is very extensive out into the lake. And I sat there, it was a cool winter day, and sketched all this. You can see my pines grading down, and trees along the edge are mostly red maple in here. I think one of them with a green ash. And then it hits real quick and goes out to the swamp. Well, these logs are important. Why would I sketch logs? Logs are important. We're going to bring logs in. Anderson Tully has done offered to get us logs. Bring logs in. Well, logs are going to rot. Sure they're going to rot. They're part of the ecosystem. But until they rot, when you walk through those woods, it's going to channel your view where them logs run into there. And you kind of see it channel my view here. I sat on the end of this log down here and sketched it. That's why it's like that. Straight. Everything else kind of out from me. And this I sketched down at Knoxville in the, it's a beaver hut. And I was lucky enough to get there. It was dry. So I got to see the whole thing, sketch it out, including the runs. Usually the water's up across here. You don't see any of this. And next slide. And what we came up with at first was this. Now we're only looking at Wetland Education Theater in this area right down through here, back through here. This is all part of schematic designs. Like Ed said, well, what are we going to do with the upper part? So in schematic design, we run the community sketches through the whole thing. But basically we're concentrating on this area. And what happens is we have these different community structures in here. Here's where we're going to burn, up here, pine savanna. These are going to be the ridge, top, ridge, edge, upper slope communities with the red oaks and scattered pines and scattered cedars. And they're going to come down in here and then start transitioning. This is that edge of that second sketch over in there. This is that first sketch. At the top, this is the second sketch in here, where you're going to have the pines and the water oaks along the edge, and then you're going to have the hackberries and the green ash in here, and then you're going to break down into the cypress swamp down into here. And that's how we did it. And we designed this first. We designed the plant community first. We designed the ecological community. Ecology took the center stage. That's totally opposite from what most construction is done. Most construction, they design the building, then they come in and they put a wiggly worm around it, some platinum and whatever. We designed the ecosystem first. Then we looked at where we were going to put hard construction. Hard construction is extremely important when you have a natural system that you're trying to interpret. I lost my voice in my last go-around. I guess I'm headed that way now.
Robert, excuse me, point out the location of the LA building so everyone gets oriented. And then the roads.
Here, here, and this that green space in the middle. This is Bully and Stone. This is a little thing, and that's that sculpture piece that won't be there no more. I thought he'd make a good fish structure, but nobody agrees with that.
Yeah, there you go. Put it in Bryan Lake.
Fish, we get a nice view out of it.
Spawning bed.
Either that or they jump out of the pond. Then after we did that, we made the interpretive concept. We developed an interpretive concept that is based on clusters and expanded clusters. And a cluster is an area where we talk about the more broad topics in there. This one will talk about the three parts of defining a jurisdictional wetland. Define those in there. And but when you go up through here, we have habitats we're trying to interpret. So I create what I call an expanded cluster. That means it all isn't gathered in one spot like this one is. All the interpretive panels. And this is forest resource one here. That's what I call it anyway. And because I have cypress here, I have bottomland hardwoods here, and then I have the upper ridges and the pine area we're going to burn here. And what we're going to do is Anderson Tully is going to give us, we're going to build these boards, finished wood, like there, and here, different places, and wood finished, like in a house. We'll have a panel, then we'll have the plant and what it looks like it came from. Then they'll be able to go out here and see the tree grow. So a complete connection there. And that's the kind of things we want. And see, this would be cypress. And with the help of Dr. Kitchens, we're going to make it cypress. That structure in there. And then if we go up the hill, of course, we have less problems with rock, but that's a biggie. And then as we go around through here, you got a wetland area. It's more of a stretched out node here. It runs along. I just pulled the, not on here, but you walk around here at the Museum of Natural Science, you see what I was talking about just around the bend. The deck pulls out the boardwalk, and then you got like a 2x12 that's sitting in a slant where they can put panels in there of pictures of birds that might be seen in the wetland, ducks, different wildlife, raccoons, possums, maybe even fish down in there. Don, I hadn't got with Don yet. Don Jackman, he's going to help us with fish. And but when I get to that point, a lot of people I haven't got to yet, but they don't know I'm coming, but I'm coming. And but we got to tie in the fish. The fish are part of the ecosystem. To have a balanced system, or the closest thing we can get to a balanced system, is we need fish. And then you move along this pathway. This is a hydrology node where you're going to interpret the hydrology. And then as you move around out of the classroom, and over here, this is moved to here now, and I'm fixing to show the next one to explain that. And this is going to explain the methodology used in designing the park. So this will be basically what I'm showing you now, to some one degree or the other. This is the sustainability. Actually, I consider this an expanded cluster. This is going to talk about the ecology used to design the structure. This is a house where Bob mentioned gadgets, sustainable gadgets, things that solar, all these different things, technology that are used. And it's going to be like a house stripped of walls with a green roof. And different technology, green wall technology. Jason is working with me on green walls. Tim and Jason has built little green roofs out on South Farm. And they're using a material that I used in Jackson, a green roof I built there. And they're putting plants on it. They're prairie plants. So we're going to have a prairie green roof. We're not just going to put any kind of, we ain't going to cover it up with sedums like everybody else. Seem to think that's the only choice. We're going to find plants, prairie plants that grow there. I kind of feel like, and I don't know, Tim might disagree, but I'm looking at short grass prairie. Xeric, shallow root system, and on thinner soil. And I think that is the kind of plant we'll end up with on this roof. We can't use things like Baptisia alba because they root deep and things like that. Of course, we love to have them when they bloom white. Actually, I think I got a photo on that line. And the next slide. this is the closer view of the plant. The way it's, these are the wetlands, light blue. You can see the islands in here are a little darker blue. They'll, the buttonbush islands are covered with buttonbushes. We'll have one of the hibiscus. Hibiscus would be a little higher than the buttonbush. And these different levels of these plants is, and the aquatic spectrum is going to be very much tied to hydrology, but also to contours, elevations. And then as you come around, as you come in here, this was the node I talked about. We'll have a trellis. We'll have pond cypress here, because pond cypress grows tall, slender, perfect scale for this type of structure. Where a bald cypress would eventually put up knees and probably break up the concrete eventually through time, and will get very, very large. Pond cypress will not do that. We had a pond cypress in Hillside Bog at the Crosby Arboretum Natural Area that was about a foot in diameter. It was 300 years old. So it grows slow, grows slender, tall, beautiful, great scale for residential or university in here. And of course, when we hit this, we're only using those kind of trees in an architectural controlled area like this. We're not using them in our habitats. These cypress will be bald cypress in there. And over here is cedars. Cedars in the prairies, back over there in the prairies, are going to be eastern red cedar, the regular form. This is Brody. It's very slender and tall. Again, it's in an architectural corner here. Bob wanted me to hide the parking lot to some degree, or break it up, the view of it, when you're over in here, straight back through here. So I picked the Brody because it will get slender and tall, and you can see they kind of break into each other in here. And then, of course, I get a thickened plant in here, also to keep you in here looking over at it. And you move here, these are benches around a boardwalk. That's a sign, interpret sign, interpret sign. This will be alkaline, the acid prayer. This would be wetland here. And more of a, have a roughly dogwoods in here. It's more of a prairie seat, you might call it. And there, this is where our water ends. This is our lowest discharge right here. It goes from here to a pipe to here. And then if you move around, this is that node I told you about. It's going to be a covered roof. All these covered roofs, except for green roof, is corrugated like tin roofs you see on barns. Very vernacular for the South and Mississippi in particular. And we're going to use it, a galvalume type material. And they're going to be wood structures. And boardwalk around through here, very similar to what I did at the Museum of Natural Science. And I had the pictures on here. And with the help of Dr. Kitchens, we're going to make all this last forever. And this area in here, hydrology, is, when I put it there, it interprets the hydrology. And this one, and this one is a tin roof. It's got a square center, 4 posts, and it's got interpretive panels around in the center, in the square. And it got seats over in here where you sit down into here and rest and look out and see, and you see the interpretive panels here. And it's big enough to roll a wheelchair around out again. Same way up there. And then when you get up to that one, it's built the same way. And then this one is built pretty much the same way. And when we get up to the classroom, it's different. And we're working on framing drawings on it now. We don't have any elevations for it right now, but we will have soon. Like I said, we're working on framing on it now. And then we got the circular area. And basically, classroom works in 3 tiers. You have a lower part here. Then you have where you can see the number of smaller groups in there. Then you have, you step up 18 inches. This is water. And you step up 18 inches and you're into the main classroom, which is about 34. Oh, cool. Thank you. And I was getting tired of stretching. This area right here, and this has some inner seats that are movable. And then the outer seats are built in. They're wood. All this is wood structure. We get up in here, this is a seat in this circle that is concrete, low, 18 inches. We have a square in through here, and we're going to have a metal structure around the outside of the square. And then this outside here is going to be a 9-foot tall concrete perforated wall, perforated by solar angles, like winter solars. And they'll shine all these different lines into here. And in this square, and we move up to here, and this is just concrete with grass. It just creates a form, like refer to it as my Rubik's Cube. Kind of reminds me of a Rubik's Cube sitting there. But I got another roof structure here. It reflects this metal roof structure. And this roof structure here and this one are separate roof structures in here on the same structure. This one slants down the same way. It's built out of the same materials. And but we have a 4x4 tower here that we're going to collect. We're going to use for Martin houses on top, maybe vats, collecting water in a tank that we can let run down into runnels and run into the center of this square with runnels. And it'll be the kind of thing, it'll rain, it'll run a while, then it'll stop. Like nature in there. Small streams that are dry most of the year. Comes a nice rain, they run, got little waterfalls, and then they quit, they go away. It's the way nature works. And no gadgets. This Bob puts it right here. Put the gadgets here. We'll let gravity do this. All of it in there. With the tank, of course, we can flag our time and let our water flow into it over a longer period of time after a rain period. So it's sort of an event that's going to occur there during a rain. And then you move around through here, and this is a boardwalk, and this is wet meadow, prairie wet meadow. This is seep in through here. This is one of our discharge pipes that's discharging into here, and we create these stilling pools which allows the pipe to come in and these things come up, level off, so that the water isn't just shooting out like this downhill, cutting out a trench, but it's got to go out, hit the backside of the wall, rise up, taking energy out the whole time, spread out. Well, my pipe that's coming out is just going to have a small bit of space right here, and all that water is going to be concentrated here. But with the stilling pools, the water can rise up, drop out heavier stuff like limbs, and rise up, and then it's got a larger lip. So you're spreading out that water over a larger edge in there, circumference in there around the edge. And the water then flows over and it flows down. And those are all over the place. So we've got pipes coming in from everywhere. And we have a civil engineer who also graduated in Mississippi State. And as you move out of here, you move down in here. These are my sitting nodes. And they're kind of like, if you can envision, you see these, well, they're kind of green, and then you got a dark gray. Well, the dark gray is in a square. Well, you kind of envision a square, a 4-foot square, and then you got a section, a 2-foot section of that, that's 4 foot long, 2 foot wide, and you reach down and you grab it and you pull it up 18 inches for a seat. That's what this looks like. All these little dark spots are raised up 18 inches off concrete. And then you hit this area here and you can come down. This is where the methodology will occur, and I'm fixing to show you the only elevation we have that's finished right now to a rendered state. And then this is our green roof. These are handicap areas right here. And you can pull in a wheelchair right here, slide up under a bench, and a kid in a wheelchair can play with planting plants and have some dirt in it. Give them a few plants, and who cares if he destroys one little 4-inch plant? He'll learn something, and he'll be connected with nature. The kid may come from the city and right down here, never been connected with nature. And they can also go around the edge in a wheelchair and reach over and touch plants, little plants here. And then this is the house area. We got all these panels that's running around, and they're all interpretive panels. We're talking about taking a section of the green roof, reproducing it down at this height so that a kid in a wheelchair can roll up to it and actually look at it and see how it works. Maybe we can get time released or a certain volume of water released into the green roof. And the kid can watch it run through the system. There's all kinds of things. That's what Bob talks about, the gadgets in there. These things help kids understand what's going on. All they see is a green roof and a drawing. That don't need to mirror as much as something three-dimensional in there. And then you're back down to our node here. And really this one, and this one is a cluster, expanded cluster, because these panels interpret the Sustainable Site Initiative, which is guiding a lot of landscape architectural development now. And this is our house with no walls. Pavilion, but I like calling it a house with no walls. We can hang all kinds of things on it. Green walls. A lot of these green walls are planted flat. You got a frame, and then you come and you hang them up after you grow them off. Those kind of things. They're frames. Even Bob said, well, some of our panels can just be a wood frame with cross pieces, and we can hang whatever kind of signs and stuff we want on, instead of having so many permanent ones. Because our technology is changing, our way we look at sustainability is changing, the way we look at ecology is changing. And next slide. This is our green roof. This is what it will look like when you're walking down the sidewalk and looking straight into it. As you walk down, you walk through. This is a section where you're walking through the center of the interpretive area that we do the methodology, or what I'm showing you here. And we're